We did it. We are back with another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is Rachel Oz. You can find her at racheloz.com. It's the great and powerful Oz. Not like that. It's spelled A-W-E-S, like awesome. I feel like you need to, marry a spouse with the sum as the last name. Maybe like an Asian sum, and then you can be awesome and hyphenate it. Okay. Anyway, total sidetrack. Rachel has a ton of cool stuff going on. She's a psychologist. She's a speaker, an author, a creator. She does fashion and art, playgroundist. We're going to find out what that means here in a second. Here we go. All right, Rachel, welcome to the show. We like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by Things That Hold Water. Things that hold water. If you can't name two things that hold water, well, damn. Okay, now here's the official joke of the week. Why can't you laugh loudly on Hawaii? It's rude to laugh loudly on Hawaii. You want to keep it to a low ha. All right, there we go. A little giggle, I'll take it. Do you have a joke for us?
Sure. Mine is, what do you call a sheep with no legs? A cloud.
Cloud. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Definitely would resemble one, and that'll get us started in the right spirit there, Rachel. So again, more information at playfulhumans.com. You know how to subscribe, like, and share podcasts. So do that if you find this interesting, and we appreciate it. Rachel, tell us a little bit about the eclectic career you have going on. It sounds like you're doing a lot of fun, different things. How did that work out for you? How come you're not selling insurance in a cubicle or something?
Well, I think that what's happened for me is that I've grown into the little girl that I was, that it's full circle, that
Love that.
the things that I do are really all that I came out of the chute with. You know, I love to draw and write and listen to my friends and play dress up. And so now I'm doing all those same things, but as a profession.
Yeah, and I think the art is really cool. You're obviously a colorful person. Anybody watching us here live can tell that, or if you're checking out the videos on YouTube. But where were you always playful? You mentioned the girl there, or it sounded like there may have been a turn off somewhere. Did you ever try to take yourself too seriously?
Yes. And so one of my professions now is a psychologist. And I think really early in my profession, I thought, well, this is what a psychologist looks like, right? And so, you know, back in the day, like wear pantyhose and as a woman, and just all these kinds of operating within a box a little bit, you know, take out my black calendar and just all these little details. And then I think little by little, it began shifting. I began giving myself more permission and freedom to be myself. And of course, one of the things in therapy that I encourage with my clients is to be authentic and to be who you really are. And so, of course, that question, that invitation comes to me as well. And I also think as I got more comfortable in the profession, and, you know, it happened little by little. And one of the first things I remember is being at the time in a Dayton's department store and trying on new glasses frames. And I was trying on a pair that seemed reasonable, and then another pair that were swirling purples and pinks and looking in the little mirror that's like this little, and giggling. And I ended up going with those because, of course, there was the question, is that professional? So I think the most professional thing we can do is show up as ourselves.
I love that. And I think that also when we show up authentically as ourselves, I find that it's more powerful. It attracts more positive
Mhm.
attention, and good things
Mhm.
happen to us because we become unique. We're not a commodity
Yes.
anymore. And there's some
Yes.
real power in being yourself, not only for your own mental health, but in the way other people perceive you. Have you found
Yeah.
that to be true? And obviously, there are some challenges, and there's going to be some people, especially if you're changing when you come out of your shell. Sometimes that
Mm.
scares people because they don't want
Mhm.
to come out of their shell, or they're worried that
Yeah.
it's going to be unsafe for you and stuff. Psychologically speaking, or professionally speaking for you, have you seen those things to be true, or what was your experience?
I think I was doing it so gradually that I don't think I freaked anyone out. And um, and so I think that also the more and more I came out of my shell, I think that other people were encouraged as well to do the same more so. And here's the thing, I do dress colorfully most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. And but it's because it brings me joy, right? And whereas, like, I have a girlfriend who she likes to wear a lot of grays and blacks, and Mike, maybe kind of how you're a little bit dressed, although you've got some swirls of color there. And yes, yes. And but that's what she feels comfortable and at home in and makes her happy. And so I super support that because that's the whole point.
Yeah, I was a little embarrassed when I was doing a like 12-year-old birthday party, and the birthday boy was wearing the same Atari shirt. But I feel like he has great
Yes,
taste. If you got a 12-year-old wearing an Atari shirt, from the
yes,
80s, then that's the one cool kid. He's my new favorite.
yes.
But I experienced the same thing, and I think it was a little
Hmm.
bit of a gradual change for me too, but I found myself wearing a lot of black and navy blue, and
Okay.
a lot of suits for work, and like you said, kind of trying to play the role of an adult or a professional. I wanted people to take me seriously, and I even did that a
Mhm.
little bit here on this podcast in Playful Humans, is I didn't want people to see me as like the bow tie wearing silly clown that's like way out
Mhm.
there. I wanted it
Right.
be scientifically and psychologically grounded. And I consider myself a creative nerd. I'm also intellectual
Mm.
as well as silly. So back here on my shelf, I
Mhm.
have, Steve Martin as an example, or other
Mm.
colorful and inspiring things that bring me joy. And I've kind of
Yes.
grown into a little bit more of the personality and being okay wearing a t-shirt on a broadcast and stuff as you go
Yes.
along, and realize nobody really cares. It'll
Exactly. And I love that a 12-year-old was also wearing that. And so we have some parallel story, meaning I've worked to grow back into full circle who I already knew to be as a child, right? And so you have this thing that a 12-year-old might also wear, which is just, it feels so just right.
Yeah, well, if I zoom out, I mean, basically, my whole background is the stuff I loved as a 12-year-old boy. I don't know what it
Yes.
is with puberty, but I've got my Voltron back here, my Lego collection, my Adidas shoes, Star Wars, all kinds of
Yes.
good stuff.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the things that I've found, is that I think in the growing up process, I got distracted by what other people told me I should do or should
Mm.
be, or I need to do to
Mm.
fit in, or to meet somebody, or things like that, and to be taken seriously. And we kind of round off all of our sharp edges, right? And then we got to kind of
Mhm.
find a way to bring them back and bring some color
Right.
and stuff back to
Right.
our life. When did you
Yeah.
start doing artwork? How did that work into it?
Well, again, I did it when I was young, and then it came back up. The inspiration was with I was around age 40, and when I was starting to work on my first book, I felt inspired in my psychology practice to be taking notes on some of the things that were taking my breath away that my clients would say. And I thought, oh, I want to write a book about this, which I did, called All I Did Was Listen.
Hmm.
And I wanted it to be colorful with my illustrations. And at the time, I was looking up little Picasso images and other people's art. And at the time, my youngest son put his hand on my shoulder and said, "No, Mom, this needs to be your art." But I hadn't been making art as an adult. So, but I believed him. So then I went about filling out full notepads, just trying to find my line work, my colors, my materials, and what authentically wanted to get expressed out of me that was fitting the writing that was coming out of me. So that's when it began.
That is really cool. I'm kind of doing the same thing again with our parallel stories with my book for Playful Humans here. As doing some writing, telling some of my stories, and then I want to incorporate games and pictures and interesting stuff that brings joy to my life and hopefully to other people too.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting concept when we think about Chat GPT and AI now and stuff, that AI can write stories, but it can't tell your story. It can make
Mm.
art, but it can't make your art.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
that's an interesting distinction, that we still need our unique voice. And I think it's going to be a challenge to humans to become more human, more authentically ourselves, because we don't need robots and computers anymore. We have those. So,
Yeah.
you can go be a human and you can let robots do robot things.
Right, right. And there is some cost to not listening to, and expressing what is flowing out of yourself, right? Because, as for example, once I be, began finding my authentic and joyful expression with making art, it began making me, right? It began also forming me. So, for example, the outfits I was illustrating on my figures began to inspire me and began to affect the clothing choices I was making on my own body. And that's just one example. But I think that when we do express ourselves, and of course, it doesn't have to be only in drawing, it could be in so many different ways. Um, that there's a co-creation process, that something gets unleashed in us and we evolve.
And what does being a playgroundist mean to you?
Yeah, it's my made up word. Um, so, being an art playgroundist means that when I'm making art, it feels like I'm on the playground again with my friends. We're running across the field, we're on the swings, the wind's in our hair, and we're free. And that's how it feels to me when I'm doing that. Yeah.
So cool. I think playground is an interesting concept as well, and just playful spaces for people, whether it's in work or their life, is getting into that safe space where you can go and you can just
Mm.
play and take a recess for yourself. As adults, I don't think we get enough recess. It turned into happy hours, and those aren't the same thing. Those are drug fueled adult conversations and sophisticated things a lot of the
Yes.
time, rather than a recess and a playground to really let loose and go out and be fully active and fully yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that elaboration, Mike. And I think that it could be a fun conversation even to have with a friend, to say, where are your safe playgrounds now? And do you give yourself recess? And what does that look like? What are the spaces? What do you like to play? And if you don't, what might you imagine, or might like to newly imagine, that you haven't yet done, that you want to stretch into? I just think it would be or whole dinner party conversation. So
yeah.
I like your elaboration a lot.
Now, I want to ask you about your artwork and your Etsy store, but before we do that, that's the tease. I wanted to ask you about your psychologist background and how you
Mm.
think about being a healthy adult, and how play helps that, but really just the whole concept of happiness and healthiness as an adult. Because I think for me, I've noticed that what we see in society is a very capitalistic and sort of
Mm.
societal pressure to be some version of like the American dream or something in order to be happy and
Mm.
successful. And certainly healthy has gotten weird as well. And when you think about those kind of things, or when you're helping other people, what role does play have in being a happy, healthy human?
Mm. I mean, numerous thoughts come to mind about that. My first one is just rather foundational, and that is for some people, it hasn't always been safe, even if emotionally safe, to play. And a lot of people have had to grow up really fast, where there was enough pain and suffering in the household and with the parent or parents that a lot of kids feel, wow, whether it's because of parents with alcoholism or with, um, all kinds of different stresses or depression or different things. And so sometimes the kids learn, boy, I've got to grow up really fast and kind of be the parent or be the adult in the house. And so they have to kind of forego playing, which is also foregoing sort of short-circuiting imagination, right? Because I think imagination and play are so intertwined. And imagination, I think, that's like its own whole part of the conversation, the
Yeah.
power of imagination.
Well,
But
for me, it means hope and
yes,
optimistic, right? That you
yeah,
can't really imagine. I guess you can use your power of to imagine all the horrible things that'll go wrong. But I think when we're talking about this
anxiety.
creative imagination
Hmm.
and playfulness, it's hard to be stressed or to feel too hopeless if you're imagining fun, playful future items or
Yes.
creating something out of nothing.
I think that's absolutely right. And in fact, as I was listening to you, I was also just remembering the research that shows that people who have any kind of trauma in their background, um, they have forgotten to imagine. And so, one of the encouragements as a therapist is to say, I want to really even give you an assignment that will be therapeutic for you to spend some time, even if it's just a few minutes in each day, um, in imagination. And that literally taking time to do that, whether it's I'm going to make up a story or it could be so many things, um, that I'm going to make up a new recipe. I mean, right? So many things that actually will be a healing force for the trauma.
I think so, and I think a lot of that research has shown that the future me stuff, and even going back to Victor Frankel and the
Mm.
World War and stuff, like being
Mhm.
able to see yourself out of it and having hope for the future is a big part of staying mentally well.
Yes,
For sure.
exactly. You know it. Victor Frankl, who, for
Yeah.
those who don't know of him, was a psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps in World War II. And one of the things I'll never forget reading by him is that the people who were most resilient in the camps never stopped planning for their future against all hope, right? Of all places to actually imagine still having a future. People who'd say, when I get out of here, I'm going to start a bakery or whatever. And that those were the prisoners who were most resilient, which says a lot about our very whole lives, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That no matter the stress, because we all have stress at least at certain points, that's how important it is that we continue to imagine forward and inward. And so thank you for mentioning Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about the definition of success for you too, specifically with the Etsy store, the product, the fashion design, the artwork, and the books. I think altogether, individually, I think a lot of people don't expect to make money on that. I think there's sort of
Mhm.
three visions of people's future, tying it into what we've been talking about. Some people are like, "Oh, you have to be a starving artist, or you're just doing this for fun, and it's a
Mm.
hobby, and it's cute, but it's never going to make any money." Or I think some people think like, oh, I have to be Mr. Beast on YouTube in order to post a
Mhm.
video, or I have to be Taylor Swift in order to play a music, and they either get tied up in that future or they feel like they're a failure if they're not Taylor Swift.
Mm. Mm.
And I found through this podcast and throughout my career, there's also this really cool middle class of creators that I call them that actually make a little money. You can pay your bills. You can, have a nice life, make 6 figures. And sure, nobody knows who you are, but sometimes that's better. You don't have all the pressures of fame and other things, or you don't have millions of followers, but maybe you got 10,000 or 100,000 that are helping you pay your bills, and you get to do what you love in this middle ground. When you think about success with all of your projects and the stuff that you're creating, what's your goal for it, and how do you kind of define it? How do you see that for yourself?
I think my goal for it truly is, well, let me get at it by saying this. My greatest joy in creating books, in my therapy work directly with people, in all the things, is ultimately my encounters with people. So let's say I'm at an event and I've done some speaking, and then I'm at my booth selling my books afterwards. It's those encounters with people, where someone says, Rachel, the thing you said really spoke to me, or what you wrote um, sits by my bedside table, and it carries me, and it's given me the permission to X, Y, or Z. Um, these, or we're just, but those moments of contact with people where their face lights up and where there's a true connection, that's what I live for. And
Yeah.
so all of those kinds of things, I want to love up people. That's it. And to make money while I do it, because the
Yeah.
truth is, I've got to pay the bills. And so, but that intersection is where I'm at.
I think that's great. And for me, there are kind of 3 different parts of it. Like the writing of a
Mm,
book, you need to enjoy that part of the process as well,
yeah.
right? If you don't
Yeah.
enjoy doing it, then
Mhm.
you're not going to have very much fun, or you're not going to write very
Yeah.
many books. So I think if you can enjoy that part of it in and of itself, that's a huge step. The second part is the kind of publishing, like you said. I get a big thrill from sharing it with the world when the podcast goes live, or I get to share it out
Mhm.
there, or somebody gives me feedback. Those are the kind of interesting things. And then I think the third part of it is really the toughest one for everybody, is the maintaining it, finding interest long
Mm.
enough for people to find you and build an audience, and to do it long term. And I also find joy in that part of it. That
Mm.
it's frustrating at the beginning to do a podcast where 5 people downloaded it, or something, and 4 were my family members.
Yeah.
But 3 years later, having hundreds or thousands of people listening to it is a really different experience, and it's a lot more
Mm.
fulfilling as well. But you kind of have to get through those parts. They all have their challenges, and they all have their joys, the way I see it.
Yes.
What's the
Yes.
most fun for you? I mean, you already mentioned meeting with the people, but as far
Mhm.
as creation, or the act in and of itself, what's the most
Yeah.
fun and playful for you?
Yeah. Um, I think, I mean, I think this answers your question, but this is the answer that's occurring to me. Um, when I sit down to write and when I sit down to illustrate, when I start to drop down into it, it's almost like dropping into a meditation.
Mm,
I can feel my heart soften. It's almost like my heart's getting sculpted as I'm in real time as it's happening. And it's that heart softening that is affirming of what I'm doing. It's an altered state, It's kind of like I don't need the happy hour drugs. As you were
mhm.
mentioning earlier, like what's the safe and good recess now for adults? And so I think for me, recess are the places where I sense this is altering my state somehow, and it's softening my heart, um, which is almost synonymous to now I'm home.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the magic in play for me. And you said
Mm,
it very well, but
mm,
I'm recording 2 podcasts today and I have 2 game shows this afternoon. And that's about 5 hours of the day where I can't think about anything else. I can't be thinking about the bills or the laundry or the other to-dos or the other stress of life or who's thinking about me or who's not, and all of
yeah.
those other things that we get mixed up in. Is I just have to be present in the moment and listening and responding to the environment and really in a playful state. And you're right. I think that the inhibitions drop, the heart melts a little bit, the brain relaxes, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden you can see and do different things. And I started the day with like an hour walk outside in nature too, and it's one of those
Mm.
nice times here in Kansas City where
Oh,
in the mornings at least it was around 70 degrees and
yeah.
cool and shade and everything's green, and so it's a really cool time. And I think those moments are really what it's all about, and why we're here living. If you get too mixed up on where you're going and what you don't have, sometimes you forget that present part too. If you're too busy
Yeah.
thinking about the past or the future.
Yes, exactly. Get near the trees.
All right, are you ready to play a game? Speaking of the
Sure.
present.
Yes, let's do
All
it.
right, here we go. We're going to do the Do Something Fun deck. This is available if you go to playfulhumans.com/sponsors, one of our sponsors, and available links there. But we're just going to flip the cards here. You tell me when to stop, and it's a comfort zone challenge. We're going to do something outside of our comfort zone. So say when.
Step. Step.
All right, you got. Oh, I don't know if you're very good at this, but you are wearing some interesting clothes. You sing about the clothes you're wearing to the tune of Happy Birthday.
Okay, right now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sing about the clothes I'm wearing in the tune of Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Rainbows and stripes and polka dots to me. Rainbow stripes and polka dots to me. Rainbow stripes and polka dots, dear Rachel. And you'll feel the glee.
That was awesome. That's so good. I was trying to figure out something with the Atari for me to the third line there. But that was great. I'm gonna let you pick a new one for me. So I'll mix these
Okay.
up here and say stop.
Stop.
All right, we got one here. Show off your cha-cha moves. I do have some cha-cha moves. I took swing dancing lessons when I was single, and then when I was first dating my wife as well. Let me see if I can fix this out here a little cha-cha. So the key to the cha-cha is the step forward and the step back, and the arm swing, just to make you look cool. And then as the guy you can lead out in either direction and do the cha-cha moves. There we go.
Most excellent.
All right. What do you think? One more round?
Very good.
You got a hard one to start. Let's see if we can get you an easy one here.
Okay, stop.
All right. We've got describe your favorite food without saying its name.
Okay. I take a bunch of veggies and a protein and cook up some rice and toss them all together and some good Asian flavors.
There you go. I love it. It sounds great. Okay. Now say one more for me.
Stop.
All right. Uh-oh. Quickly tell a joke. Well, obviously I can do this one. One of my favorite jokes of all time, though I don't think I've ever said this one on the podcast. I stole from a comedian here in St. Louis, or say yeah, he's from St. Louis. But I went to the University of Missouri after high school. I live in Kansas City, went to the University of Missouri, was a Tiger, and I finished there in 2 years. A lot of people find that impressive. A lot of those people have degrees. There's no fence or walls or anything. If you want to be done, you just get to get.
I see.
So that's one of my favorites, just because it subverts the expectations of a 4-year college degree. And I did graduate from Park University here in Kansas City, but I thought that was great.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Rachel. Tell us about racheloz.com and the Etsy store, racheloz.etsy.com. What will we find there?
Yeah, so on my website, racheloz.com, you'll find links to a number of things. You can click on the top header to my counseling page to learn more about me as a psychologist and my services. You can click from there also to my online store, where you can find my 4 different illustrated gift self-help books that are just playful, fun, and deep all at the same time, and art. And just numerous things. They're kind of all a playground. They're another recess space.
So good. And if you want to learn more about Playful Humans, you can go to playfulhumans.com. There's a playfulness quiz. You can find out which of the 10 playful personality types you are, maybe some interesting ideas about how you can lean into that and become more of your 12-year-old self as well. And a burnout quiz. If you want to see how crispy you are you medium well, medium rare, well done, go find out playfulhumans.com/quiz. And don't forget to share this with somebody that you think needs to hear it. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing